friends, and welcome to the Nirvana of anime and games that is the Taisen Zone. Happy New Year! Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit late on that one, aren't I? Dealing with all these intergalactic dark gods and sequel movies that ruin endings to perfectly good anime tend to drain me a little bit. The latter more than the former. Still, I guess now that I'm back, I should be doing some more reviews of imported video games. So why don't we get right into it with probably the wet dream of every anime I'll talk about there. At least the ones that like Max, the Super Robot Taisen franchise. For those who have been keeping up with the series, the final game in the Z series has been recently announced and is set for release in April for the PS3 and the Vita. Just from the trailer alone, I get the feeling it's going to be one of the greatest games in the franchise, and might possibly beat out even Alpha 3 as my personal favorite. As such, I thought it'd be only appropriate that I review the first 3 games in the series before it comes out. So what do you say we get right into it with... Do I really have to review this one?
Hey, you are the dude who said he was going to review every game in the series, dude.
Yeah, but you don't really need to play this one in order to get into the other games.
Come on, don't start making excuses now, dude.
Okay, I'll do it. Say, do you want to take it home with you after I'm done reviewing it?
Hey, it's your game, dude. You take care of it, dude.
You've already played it, haven't you?
Have fun with the review, dude.
Let's review Super Robot Taisen Z for the PS2. Yeah, while I said that the final game in this lineup is shaping up to be the best in the franchise, I might not have believed that after playing this first outing. What's wrong with it exactly? Well, as usual, let's go through it step by step by first talking about the game's technical aspects. As always, the soundtrack in this game is top-notch. They've got remixes of all of the theme songs and BGM from every anime series involved, and of course some great original soundtracks provided by Jam Project. One of my personal favorites being the theme for the Ganleon. Oh yeah. And of course, as always, they brought in all of the original voice actors to reprise their roles for their respective anime. Though some sound clips sound a little bit buggy. For instance, Moo here sounds like he has a swamp's worth of frogs in his throat. Still really good overall though. Graphics wise, it's also pretty good. The mech sprites look very smooth and well detailed, and the actual attacks are okay, but a bit stiff. I don't know, some of them feel not nearly as dynamic as what they look like in Alpha 3 or even MX. Still, maybe I'm being too picky. I mean, I've seen the Nagai robots so many times that maybe I've just become jaded to them. I mean, I can't imagine them doing anything new or incredible in the next game. What was that? Anyway, as the game progresses, the attacks do become more and more dynamic, so overall, as the final Super Robot Taisen game to be released on the PS2, as well as one of the last games released for the PS2 period, it gets good marks for its technical aspects. About the only major gripe I have is how all the tri-attacks look pretty much exactly alike. What exactly are the tri-attacks? Well, we'll get to them when we get into gameplay, but first let's talk about... Okay, this is actually an interesting aspect about this game. While there are 2 different storylines following a female main character who pilots a real robot and a male main character who pilots a super robot type, because of some sci-fi mumbo-jumbo caused by the Orgus, one of the anime series in this game, the worlds of the main characters as well as others are beginning to merge. This is actually pretty interesting, because even though dimensional gates aren't uncommon in a game series that builds itself on crisis crossovers, I think this is the first time we see the Banpresto original characters from 2 different storylines in the same game meet. There's even a stage where a bunch of the main characters end up fighting each other. As for the original characters themselves, yeah, they're kind of bland. Ran, the super robot pilot, is fun, sure, and definitely has a great upbeat attitude and a hot-blooded nature that I do kind of like, though he is a little bit one-noted with all that. Meanwhile, Setsuko, the real robot pilot, is the polar opposite, being a fairly deep character, though having a really depressing backstory, and everyone in her squad dying except for hers. Whew. Yeah. What made the Banpresto originals in the previous Super Robot Taisen games memorable was the fact that they had some great interactions with their teammates. Here, not only do both main characters have little interaction with the third-party anime characters, but not even a lot amongst their fellow Banpresto originals. Ran doesn't really interact with his wife that much, and Setsuko doesn't have that many people to interact with once they all die. They're okay, but not great characters in my book. Still, in the end, I've been kind of nitpicking, I'll admit, and for the most part up until now, the game has some legitimately good qualities. Why do you say we take it down a few notches, shall we? Not counting the Banpresto originals or the second seasons of certain shows, this game has 20 different anime series in it. On a personal note, ones that stick out for me include Big O, one of my favorite shows that aired on Toonami back in the day. Good lord, I'm getting old. The UC Gundams from Z and Char's Counterattack, the 4 main mech series of Go Nagai, Erica 7, Aquarion, and Gravion. Yeah, I'll be the first to admit that those last two are really stupid anime, the latter being the creation of a hentai director, no less. But they're guilty pleasures, and they're pretty darn good in this game still yet. However, aside from them, I don't think there's a lot of series that stick out that much. In particular, the Gundam lineup here is probably one of the weakest I've seen in a game so far. I guess Turn A might have its following despite it never reaching Western shores, but by my understanding, Gundam X was cancelled because of low ratings. Still, maybe there's a good modern Gundam series in this game. Oh, that's right, it has Gundam Seed! Destiny. Yeah, that god-awful follow-up to one of the great turn-of-the-century Gundam series. Yeah, I probably should have included that one on my worst sequels countdown. Also, I may be wrong, but many of these series seem to be very obscure robot anime created by Tomino Yoshiyuki. I mean, outside of Gundam, who out there actually has ever heard of series like Zambot 3 or Die Turn 3 or Zabungo? I swear to God, I did not make up that name. I could never even come up with a name like that, even if I tried. I apologize to any fans of this show, but really, Zabungo, that has to be one of the stupidest goddamn names I've ever heard in my entire life. Their units are okay, I guess, but the thing is that they really feel out of place in this kind of game where we have the UC Gundams in it. I guess they're supposed to be real robots, but they move and fight as though they were freaking Looney Tunes characters.
Well, that's just silly.
And yes, I know I'm the idiot who gushed over Bonta-kun being in W, but here's the thing, that was mostly a joke. I never really used him outside of a plot-relevant battle. And from what I've seen in Zabungo, it rivals even the Tiny Mouse in terms of silliness, with a ton of meta jokes and just really lame 80s cheese. And yes, I've heard it's the ancestral anime to that of Gurren Lagann, but here's the thing, while Gurren Lagann's ultimate attack looks like this, here's what Zabungo's ultimate attack is. I mean, come on, just look at this. It's as if you were to say put Sergeant Frog into the game. Excuse me a minute. Hello, Japan? What the f- I get the feeling that this anime was made by Tomino to get off of his whole kill 'em all phase after Adion, but when I see stuff like this, I begin to pine for the good old days of robots to destroy the entire universe. Still, all of that aside, as long as I have at least that handful of good series that I mentioned, I guess I can enjoy this game and even come to appreciate the more obscure series. As long as they don't put me in a position where I have to use only them. Yeah, guess what I had to go through for much of the earlier stages of this game. This game seems to enjoy playing keep away with some of the better units. Units like the Big O or Aquarion, who along with being from shows that I like, are also a couple of the better units in the game, and they leave the group for up to 7 stages after I've met them. In fact, in the case of the Aquarion, they didn't officially join my team until the 4th time I encountered them. Hell, 3 of the 4 heroes of the Nagai universe don't start joining my team until stage 22. And up until stage 24, Koji, the pilot of the Mazinger Z and the big hero of the Nagai robot universe, is piloting a dinky little plane. Are you kidding me? That's like having Han Solo pilot one of those dinky little snow spear things instead of the Millennium Falcon during the first movie. As a result, most of the first third of this game, either on the Super Robot side or the Real Robot side, just involves playing with a bunch of C-lister anime. Again, this just might be my opinion, but from what I've read on the Japanese Amazon page, many also share my opinion that a lot of these series are very unfamiliar to them and it feels like they're being forced to play with them. And even if I did like these series, having characters leave and join the roster make it difficult to get a handle on their unique skills and abilities. So why is it that this game feels like it needs to change the roster more than a comic book superhero team? Well, I think it has something to do with the new battle system, which I'll get into in... This game introduces the tri-battle system, which, as the name suggests, allows the player to create up to a 3-unit squad. Appropriately enough, it's basically a combination of the dual squad system that was introduced in the OG series, and the 4-man squad system that was introduced in Alpha 2. As such, it's a little bit more complex in both of those systems. For instance, in Alpha 2 and 3, the squad leader would perform the primary attack, while the rest would just provide cover fire when possible. Here, the squads can line up into 3 different formations, with each serving their own unique purpose. First, there's the tri-formation, where if you have 3 units in your squad, you can perform what is called a tri-attack, which I mentioned a little while ago. It allows you to attack all members of an enemy squad at once, with damage being calculated based off of the squad leader's stats. Any kill counts and most of the experience points will go to him, so it's good for when you want to level up your favorite characters. The center formation lets the entire squad focus their attacks on the opposing squad leader, so it's basically the equivalent of what was found in the Alpha games. And lastly, there's the Y formation, which allows all members of your squad to individually attack members of an enemy squad opposite them. It's not quite the same as a tri-attack, as each attack is based off of each individual squad member, and any experience will be distributed to their respective unit. If this at all sounds overly complicated, that's only because it is. Yeah, I'll be honest, it took me a while to get used to it, but when I did get the hang of it, I realized it was a fairly well put together system. After all, formations can be changed at any time during the player's turn, so it allows the player to change up strategies, and if you organize your squads well, you can gain distinct advantages since all units can gain specific bonuses when they have certain squad leaders. Also, unlike the Alpha games, there are no squad restrictions, so you can put whoever you want in whatever squad you want. However, there is a big, and I do mean big, problem with this system that brings the whole game down a few points. That being the simple fact that really there's not enough characters to go around to justify such a system. Now, while I did say there were 20 series in this game, which is a good number for a Super Robot Taisen game, the actual number of characters they bring to the table is pretty small. In fact, 6 of the series in this game only have their titular mechs representing them for most of the game. Aquaria and Gravion do get a couple more units, but really late into the game, and in the case of the Aquarion, it's basically a hidden character. In fact, in the case of a lot of these super robots here, they have at best a couple of weaker sidekick mechs, or dinky little planes, and over half of the game is made up of these super robot series. When I had the chance to start making my own squads, which by the way started from stage 16, a little late in the game, isn't it? I realized I didn't have enough units to form a lot of decent squads. For at least 2 or 3 of them, I had to make one-man squads because I didn't want them to lose their ability to fly if they were grouped with grounded units. While I haven't played it, I think a squad system worked well in a game like Alpha 2 just because they have a bunch of Gundam series to round up the numbers. Here, I honestly believe the tri-battle system was tacked on at the last minute, and as a result, the whole game was thrown out of whack. They had to adjust the difficulty, and as a result, certain characters had to leave my group for very contrived reasons so that the earlier stages wouldn't be too easy, I guess. Of course, they could have just done something crazy like incorporating restrictions like they did in the Alpha series that prevented players from grouping the Machine Guards and the Gyararobo in one squad earlier in the game. But nope, the game decides it wants to play keep away with all of the cool units. But even ignoring my personal tastes, which I really shouldn't be doing in a game like this since it's all about the fan service, I have to say that the difficulty here really feels unbalanced, especially in the earlier stages. I experienced some awful difficulty spikes along with some of the worst cases of enemies appearing out of nowhere. Yeah, I know a lot of the Super Robot Taisen games do this, but this is probably some of the worst I've seen in any of them, as really there's absolutely no build up to the second wave of enemies that appear and have absolutely nothing to do with the first wave. But don't worry, you can go crazy in the later parts of the game where it's some of the more overpowered units and make the game a breeze after a very frustrating first half. Yeah, there's a lot of disjointed gameplay here, and it's not helped by probably the clunkiest menus I've ever experienced. Not just in the Super Robot Taisen games, mind you, but in any RPG I've ever played. Navigating them is a chore, and at times building squads is even harder than to actually battle with them. There's also a bazaar where you can buy extra parts, but I rarely used it, except for when hidden units were available for purchase, which, by the way, look at this! There's a ridiculous amount of hidden characters and units that I have to constantly look up the strategy guide for. I know that the next game in this line was criticized for not having enough secret goodies, but here it's just ridiculous when in every other stage I have to make sure I'm not missing out on anything like, oh say, half of my potential roster! You know, they probably should have saved the tri-battle system for a later game like the upcoming PS3 title, which looks like it's going to have an enormous roster. But here, they really didn't need a squad system, but they put it in anyways. As a result, the difficulty was highly unbalanced, and worst yet, I couldn't use some of my favorite characters and mechs for much of the game. Overall, this game just felt very linear, like it was forcing me to play it the way it wants me to play it. Hell, there's one stage where I can't even skip past some god-awful dialogue from King Gainer. To me, linear should never be a word I have to use to describe this game. I want to be able to use the characters and mechs from anime I grew up watching, not to play as characters I know little about or worse yet, really don't care for. This is probably the saddest way this game series could have ended its PS2 run. As such, I give it 2 stupidly named mechs out of 5.
主人公メカの力見せてやるよロボットのパターンだろ Very funny
So yeah, I say that if you're going to get an import PS2, you should just stick with Alpha 3 and not this poor addition to a great franchise. Besides, starting for the next game, a lot of series that were in this one are going to either be dropped or replaced with certain other series. Also starting the next game, 2 series that I think one is really popular with the female demographic and the other one that's really popular with the male demographic like me, are going to be added to this game, so I would say that in that game, you're going to really want to pick it up and just skip this guy anyways. What 2 series am I talking about, and what series I'm going to be replacing the next game? Well, you'll just have to wait and see for my next review. Until next time, though, this is the Ant-Man giving my hats off to you guys. I just had to get that out.